considerations.
Okay.
And as I said,
And with
the
the reason-
ANAO are currently auditing this as part of their process.
Okay. No, I understand, but there's a reason why we want to get more clarity in our answers, as you can appreciate, because the ANO did not come back with a glowing report.
Yeah, but that was around ICCPM, but as you notice, it's in a two-part period. That this first part was around ICCPM
Mr. Harfield,
contracting.
I'm well aware there's still work going on. This committee is very mindful.
But what they are actually doing and auditing at this moment in time are about the questions you are asking, not... So the audit they did was a different part, and the current audit is actually delving into the issues and questions that you're actually asking.
Okay, that's fine. Just so
And I don't want to
record.
prejudice that audit or prejudice the tender evaluation
The
process.
track
that is still
record
going
hasn't
on.
been great. You haven't bathed, covered
Senator,
yourself
well aware
in
that
glory,
the report,
not
the
you,
report
but
is where it is.
Mr. Hartfield, I can talk over you just as much as you can talk over to me.
I understand that, Senator, but I just want to make sure that what is on the record is actually correct to what's actually going on.
No more than this. In fact, this committee wants to just as much as you, because we're not convinced that we're there or anywhere near there. Hopefully we might be wrong. Right, now we'll, Chair, just to, in context, take the opportunity to put the preamble down, so very clear of the questions I'm asking. So one of the hearings we had last year, this committee, we were particularly alarmed by the engagement of a member of the International Centre for Complex Project Management Board, and that was that is Mr. Bradford, not was. And Mr. Bradford undertook the role of lead negotiator during contract negotiations with the successful tenderer Thales, whose managing director was also chair of ICCPM board at the time, correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. The committee was told at the hearing that the contracting rate of Mr. Bradford as lead negotiator was about $1 million, but that Airservices was getting value for money given the negotiating rates for the size of the contract. Do you remember that?
Senator, yes, it was $5,000 a day. This is actually a contractual piece, and then the period it was on would have been around that order of about $1 million.
Okay.
Over about an 18-month period.
How's the maths work there? It's $5,000 a day. How many days of service?
Over the 18-month period of the top of your head, it's actually detailed in the ANAO report. That's all in there.
I think we can do a quick calculation, can't we? Anyway, handsome. But it's a good question. So in terms of probity matters regarding the involvement of ICCPM contractors in the tender evaluation and contract negotiation processes, the ANO found that, and I'm quoting, Airservices did not apply any consideration to potential, actual or perceived conflict of interest matters in deciding to engage the lead and deputy lead negotiator via ICCPM. Actual or perceived conflicts of interest could have been effectively contemplated and managed had Airservices combined competitive tendering to these two long-term high-cost roles with active consideration of any conflicts as part of the procurement process. Do you have a problem with what I'm saying so far?
Not at all, Senator.
Okay. Airservices also did not consider conflict of interest matters before the lead and deputy lead negotiator became involved in the evaluation of tenders ahead of the contract negotiation phase of the tender process. And in their words, these were significant failings by Airservices. Do you accept this assessment?
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
Can I just,
please
without
do,
disturbing your
Chair.
flow, because this, from a governance point of view, and at the risk of repeating Senator Steele's characterisation of it, ICCPM were in effect providing services to see this tender process went smoothly.
No, that's not correct, Senator. They were contracted to provide subject matter expertise in assisting us with complex program management. As an organisation, procuring an air traffic control system is not something that we do on a regular basis. And as a result, we formed a relationship with ICCPM back in 2010 to assist in building the capability. These two individuals were brought on to assist at various times, and one of the individuals, Harry Bradford, has been mentioned, was contracted to provide the lead negotiation.
Before you spend too much time telling me things I might not even have an interest in, ICCPM PM were integral in part to the process. Is that a fair statement?
No, they supplemented the process. The reason is, Senator, is that
Well,
these are two individuals that provided
Mr.
subject matter to the
Harfield.
tender evaluation process. They were
Mr.
not
Harfield?
integral to it.
We can have supper here at 10 o'clock if you choose to, but just if you might, let us focus on the points, and if we need to drill down or you need further explanation, let me go this way. You've got Tallis on one hand, and well, let me ask you the question. What part did ICCPM play in your interests in dealings with Tallis?
With the lead negotiator being an ICC or contracted through ICCPM.
Okay. So, what? And I don't know where you fitted into the spoken wheel of this, but we have someone who's engaged with Tallis, who is the chair of ICCPM, correct?
At that time, the person that was engaged was not the chair of ICCPM, but they sat on the ICCPM board.
So where did Mr. Jenkins fit in?
Mr. Jenkins is the chief executive of Tallis Australia,
Correct.
and he was the chair of the board at the time.
Well, sorry, that was the point I was making. And his colleague on the board, or referred to as...
Mr. Jenkins.
Yeah, but
Harry
was it-
Bradford.
Mr. Bradford.
You got me thrown. Mr. Bradford, mate.
Was in effect on the board with Mr. Jenkins, correct?
Correct.
And he has paid a professional purse to negotiate with Tallis. Is that a fair comment?
He was contracted as the lead negotiator in negotiating with Tallis.
Did this, we're talking historically, did this not concern anybody around this process? Is that not just like looking inwards? I would have thought that there is, at the very least, a perception of a massive conflict of interest when having regard to the numbers and responsibilities associated with this. Now, I'm not asking you to justify it or condemn it. I'm asking, was there, what was the thinking around allowing this to happen?
Senator, we have publicly stated, even including at the 9th of September hearing with this committee last year, that the perception of potential perceived conflict of interest was not handled appropriately by Airservices. That's fully admitted, fully understood, and part of that, it was also covered, the issue is actually covered in the ANAO report in quite depth to find out that there was no actual conflict of interest. However, as I've said, we've publicly stated we did not handle that appropriately. We could have handled it better, and these are the issues that we've put into place.
So I'm interested in, we'll take all the time we need here, Senator Steele. I'm interested in who we are.
Airservices Australia?
No, we're way past that. We're putting personalities into the frame here. For example, how many members of the current board of Airservices would have been involved in at the very least, ratifying the decision for these two gentlemen to interact in that fashion while they were both with ICCPM?
The decision to employ the two gentlemen were the authorisation of the Chief Executive of Airservices. The board were aware of their engagement, which was covered off at the 9th of September hearing, and the chair of Airservices, Sir Angus Hewson, even admitted at that stage that the handling of the potential perceived conflicts of interest was not well, and that's why the board commissioned the Allens report back as a result of the 18th of August hearing of last year here, and undertook to review all those particular events, which we are covering off here now. And there was a number of recommendations out of the Allens report which were also initiated to address these particular issues.
Well, we'll get to the Allens report because there was a less than favourable reference made to it in terms of whether it was provided with all of the relevant information to allow it to properly make its recommendations and findings. But thank you for all that, but it did not address the burden of my question. Door to door, house by house, what members of the board currently were there when this was allowed to happen? By name.
So the engagement of these two employees, these two individuals, in their capacity through contracting through ICCPM, the engagements were first occurred in 2012, and so we'd have to have a look at who the board was at that particular stage in 2012.
You have no independent...
And I'm just trying to work through. So the chair of the board, depending on the timing, the chair changed from David Forsyth to Angus Houston. Angus Houston was a member of the board. Dr. Warren Mundy was the deputy chair. Ms. Annette Kimmett at some stage during 2012 came on the board with Mr. Paul Lucas and Ms. Sam Beatson, Mr. Tony Matthews, and I'd have to recollect to see who was there at 2012.
Well,
there were some changes on the board during 2012. So.
Well, I'm loath to have you take things on notice. Would you?
We can look up annual reports.
Would you take that on notice? Yep. I'm interested in the identity of board members at the time that these appointments were ratified by the board, acknowledged by the board was briefed about them, and those who remain today on the board. So you understand the
Yes,
clarification of my question.